Hi, Heather. And I would love to go ahead and get started. So I'll go ahead and hit start on this. We're good to go. Great. I'm going to start sharing my screen with everybody. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming today and getting together around this topic. It's a really challenging and activating one for us to speak about, but it is so important. And so I really just want to recognize like what a big ask this is and send some appreciation your way for showing up. The whole purpose behind today is two parts. Number one, it's to teach you how to respond and what to ask if you are presented with students that are experiencing suicide ideation. So, how to do a really quick assessment. And then, probably most importantly, is what to do on the SMCC campus. So, those are the goals. As we are getting started, I really just wanted to set some intentions and put some grounding in place that this is a really activating topic for all of us. Like there are no exceptions to this. And if you notice that like you are just not feeling quite right as we're doing this, it is totally okay and recommended to step away from your computer and push pause for a couple minutes or turn your video off and rejoin when you can. What we ask though is that you stay with us to the extent possible and not leave all the way even though I definitely can't be providing one-to-one support with each and everybody that might want it while this is happening, what I am offering is to stay after. So please stay and catch up with me if there's things that you don't want to ask in a group setting, or if you're just left feeling dysregulated after this. Um, Putting this out to the group, um, why do you think from, your first 2 months or so in your positions, why do you think we're talking about this particular topic now, if you had to guess? And you can just unmute yourself and chime in.
Because we've had to deal with that sort of thing already.
You have got it. Yeah, we've had a really active fall in terms of crises on campus and crisis response. And a lot of you have been put in positions of being first responders without fully having training in how to do so. And so it's our hope to give you some skills today to help you feel a little bit more confident when this comes up, even though we know and totally recognize that like no matter what, like this is really activating and you're never going to feel like you get it 100% right every time because it's actually really scary to be faced with this. And so if you are in the midst of this today, learning this stuff and start to question things that you have done and said in the past, that is okay and normal. If you start to rethink different ways that you handled things in the past, or like, oh my gosh, I wish I could have done this, that is normal, but that's why we are here. Like, we're all here to improve our practices and learn different resources, and also know that, like, there's no way to get this 100% perfectly. We are humans working with humans. And so I ask today and always, with this topic especially, that we just offer each other a whole heck of a lot of grace in this. What do you think I mean when I say, like, let's give each other grace today and in the future?
Giving people a chance to process everything and not being super harsh and asking a million questions at once.
That is so true. What else? We say give grace to each other today.
Just overall, this is not an easy thing to be learning about or talking about. And whenever we have to deal with this sort of situation, there's not really a perfect way that you can address it.
That is so true. And so, if as you're learning about this stuff, you start to think back to things that might have happened at the end of August or the beginning of September, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that Britt did X, Y, or Z, or that I said X, Y, or Z to a student. Like, that actually isn't helpful, right? Like, we're all going to think back to things that we wish we did differently. What is helpful is just recognizing that we're all learning. And, if somebody tries something or asks something today that doesn't land perfectly right, let's offer some forgiveness and really like just recognition of good intent that like we're all here to try today. Just in case you don't have it, I put my contact information on this slide so that if Zoom is just not the right platform for you to touch base, but you want to, or today, like you just need to check out after we're done with this, I totally get that. But I really do want to hear from you to talk about how this is going, what this brought up for you, because we know that we all bring different things into trainings like this. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions about the intentions that we're setting just to start today with?
Ellen, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Throughout the segment, can people just ask questions in the chat? Do you want me to help you monitor that or?
thank you so much. I would love if you could help me monitor that. And
Okay,
if folks feel comfortable putting questions in the chat, that's a great way to come forward. Or you can like do the little hand raise. Um, and Tori and Britt, I would love your help just kind of monitoring so that I don't drone on and on forever.
perfect.
Thank you. Um, I also put on here the importance of de-identifying when we're having conversations today. My hope is that through practice this afternoon, we'll start to talk through some different case studies or examples of things that we might have encountered on campus. And what I am asking is to please, 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 please don't use names. You might have an idea of who someone is alluding to, and that is totally fine. But what we can say is something like, hey, I just wanted to know what about when a student says X, Y, or Z and does X, Y, or Z? What I don't want us to say is, hey, well, do you remember when Luke said this on the 5th of September, right? Like, not helpful. If we just subtract the name, it becomes something that is something that we can consult about as a group and separates it from the person itself. And if we can, part of de-identifying is like it's totally okay to change names when we're talking about things. It is okay to change behaviors when we're talking about things, just to preserve our students' confidentiality to the extent possible. Does anybody have any questions about what it means to de-identify? Okay. As we're moving through this, something that I would recommend everybody do if you can, is keep something next to you, either like the notes app on your phone or like I'm a big fan of clipboards, and write down the different scenarios that you've encountered as you think of them so that at the end, when we start doing practice together, you've already got ideas ready and you're not left thinking with an empty brain. Because if we know anything to be true, when we're feeling really activated, our brains are just going to kind of shut off and we won't be able to think of these examples in the same way that unless we practice these skills when we are not in crisis, like today, we won't be able to use these skills when it happens. Like it's so much better and easier for us to access this stuff when we have a calm brain. Before we get into the actual content of this, does anybody have anything that they want to ask or say for the good of the group before we dive into step one? Chat or hand raises, welcome.
I'd like to add that since with my profession, I do a lot of this work. So if I don't say a lot, it's because a lot of this I basically had to go through with going through the jail and stuff like that.
Thank you for that. And without putting you unnecessarily on the spot, if this is something that you do have expertise in, I actually really welcome your participation because I totally recognize that, like, I am not the only person with the knowledge here. And if you have things that you'd like to add to improve our practices on campus, please, please, please do. How about other folks? Okay, let's dive in. So again, this is a two-step process. We are really honing in today on, oh, perfect. We've got some scenarios coming in. This is great. We'll be able to come back to these. Thank you so much. Um, so yeah, this is a two-step protocol we're going to learn today. The first piece of this is to assess people who are reporting suicide ideation. And the second part of today is more generalizable. So this is a way of thinking through crisis that we can apply to a lot of different situations that we might face on campus. But we're really honing in on suicide ideation because it has been so prevalent among our student population this year. So the tool that we are going to use is called the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale. It's kind of a mouthful, but in short, it's called the CSSRS. Out of curiosity, who here has heard of this before or seen it? Some places that you might have encountered this are like your place of work, when you are at the doctor, in one of your classes. Who's got a little bit of familiarity with this? Heather's saying yes. Okay. Um, I will be honest with you. Well, let me ask before I just move on. Um, Can anyone talk a little bit about what their experiences with this have been so far, if any? Good, bad, indifferent? Okay. This is by no means the only assessment tool that exists. There are many of them. You'll probably learn about others, or if you're in the human services field, that maybe you like better. But the reason that I zeroed in on this one for our uses in student life is because it is really simple and it is fast. So you do not need to be a master's level clinician to do this. In fact, anybody on the street can do this. What matters is that you know what to ask and how to ask it to gather important information from someone that you're working with. Something that you'll notice here about this too is that this actually uses really direct language. So if we are assessing somebody for suicide, we're using the word suicide. We are asking directly about someone's intention or thoughts of killing themselves. If you had to guess, why do you think that is really critically important when you're doing an assessment? I used to teach fifth grade, so I've got awesome wait time. Why is it so important to use direct and clear language when we're assessing somebody for suicide ideation?
Because miscommunication could lead to either over escalating the situation or not giving attention.
You hit the nail on the head. In order to get accurate information, we need to ask accurate questions so that we can determine how at risk somebody is. So, first, I'm just going to tell you what these 6 questions are so that you will have heard them. And then everybody can put themselves on mute and actually practice hearing themselves say it out loud. You are going to feel weird. It will be okay. So, if somebody comes to you and reports that they are experiencing an increase in depressive symptoms and having thoughts about not wanting to be alive anymore in a variety of ways, and we'll talk about how that might sound, what you would ask them first is, okay, so like I understand that you've been feeling really depressed. Have you wished that you were dead or wished that you could go to sleep and not wake up? And listen for their answer. And then you would zero in. Question 2 is a little bit more specific. It asks, have you actually had any thoughts about killing yourself? Notice that language gets just a little bit more direct here. And if they answer no here, we'll talk about what to do with that because you still might want to have a response depending on what they say. But if they answer yes, then you move on to the next question. Have you been thinking about how you might actually do this? This question assesses for the person's plan. And you can see the colors here are becoming a little bit more pigmented, and that signifies to us like, okay, this is intensifying in risk level. Question 4 is, have you had these thoughts and had some intention to act on them? So question 3 is really about like, what is your plan? Question 4 is, have you started to put some action behind that or some behavior? And that is an indicator that somebody is approaching a higher risk level. From there, the next thing we would want to ask is, have you started to work out or actually worked out the details of how you would kill yourself? And do you intend to carry out this plan? So again, just really zeroing in, getting a yes or no response from someone and trying to gather some detail from them. And no matter what, we always ask, have you done anything, started to do anything, or prepared to do anything to end your life? Because that, what they say there would really change the whole game and how we respond to someone.
Ellen,
Mm-hmm.
could we take a pause and Kaya had a question about this question specifically,
Yeah.
saying, I feel as though that might not be the best question to ask though, question mark, because what if it escalates the situation further and creates a more negative response from the student? Because if I was in that situation and someone asked me these questions, it would create a more negative environment and make me want them to go away, question mark.
Oh, that is such a good point. I'm really, really glad you asked this. Kaya, was it one question in particular that made you think that?
It looks like it's all of them.
Mm. I am going to open this up to the group, and I might regret this, but I think it could be really worth it for conversation. What do people think about this? Does asking directly about suicide ideation make it more intense or insert an idea for someone that's not already there?
I
What do
would
we
agree with
think?
Kaya. From my experiences with the kids that I work with in the jail, we at all costs avoid asking any questions like that because if they're in a state of like where they're already making those comments, asking those questions is going to make them more frustrated because they feel like they're getting interrogated rather than us helping them. So, and I've experienced that with the people, with the children in the jail that I work with. Like they've said that they just feel more of an interrogation aspect of it instead of a I'm here to help you aspect.
Kaya, I appreciate that. Out of curiosity, at the jail, what's the typical age of the people that you work with?
Um, the ages range from 12 to 21, because juveniles can serve sentence until they're 21. But most of the kids I work with are actually between the ages of 16 and 18.
Hmm?
So most of the time, I'm experiencing people who are at our basic same age level.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Um, Something that I'll offer too, just in recognizing the population you work with, is there is a slightly different protocol for people who are under age 18. I'm using the adult formulation. Um, and I appreciate the context for like where your question comes from. It's really important. And I'd love to open this up to the group. It looks like William's got his hand up. Here, what do you think? Does asking make things more intense or worse?
You. For me, this is just based on my own experience in higher ed, my own training for in not necessarily in this field specifically, but training that every year involved working directly with counselors and working with folks that were specifically trained on these type of topics. One thing they have emphasized to us every single year in every single training that it might be that it is going to be a tough question to ask and it is going to be a tough situation that may not be pleasant to have, and some people may react poorly in terms of what you were saying, because I think those are very valid feelings. But one thing they were very consistent of is that about emphasizing is that asking the question does not increase the likelihood that that person's going to go through with that with a plan, or does not increase that likelihood that they're going to make an attempt. Now, I know it, I think everyone that's spoken so far brings up some good points, and I don't want to sound like I'm trying to invalidate everything, but based on my own experiences and training and working with people, as well as my own experiences responding to people who've been in this situation, including a completed one, um, I don't think any of them have given me the impression personally. I just want to emphasize that I'm not claiming to be an expert, or I'm not trying to invalidate everyone. That as hard as it is, it from my own experience and my own folks that I've worked with over the 5 years I've been in this field, the thing they keep emphasizing is ask the question, because it may be hard, it may be difficult, it may make them uncomfortable, but it also may make them address the fact that that's actually how they're feeling. And if they don't address that fact, they may not have the opportunity to seek help and get help before they they before they actually make the decision to do that. It's not, no one's gonna, I don't think anyone's gonna be asked that question and be like, oh yeah, definitely, and chatting like it's every day. But that's just my 2 cents, based on my own experiences and my own um experiences with this. So again, don't want I think y'all do bring up some good points. I don't want to invalidate those points, but I also wanted to share what I had been previously taught by several different experts across the country on this matter.
And William, what you are saying is totally in line with the research on this topic. So this tool and this practice is evidence-based and has been proven to be really life-saving. That by asking questions, we're actually not asking about suicide. We are not, generally speaking, inserting an idea into someone's mind and increasing their risk of lethality. In fact, the opposite is true. We are showing that we're acknowledging what might already be true for someone and showing them that we've got this. you know, that we are unafraid and that if they are going through that, it is okay because we know what to do with it. And if someone is not experiencing these thoughts, we are giving them a lot of opportunities to share that too, so that there's a lot of off ramps to this. It's sort of a silly example, but what I always think about is like, if somebody asks me if my shirt is gray, it's not going to make it more gray, or it's not going to change the color of it. It's just going to acknowledge, like, oh, yeah, this is true for me. The same is kind of true here. Go ahead,
El
Brett.
Ellen, one thing is, two things here, I guess, is one, Natalie brought up maybe rephrasing these questions. What would be the importance of, keeping the questions the way they are and not rephrasing, if there is pros and cons to that? And then I'll ask you an additional question afterwards, if that's okay.
Thank you. And then we'll go to Doug. Do you want to answer this one or ask a question
Yeah.
as well?
No, I was gonna contribute. Um,
Please.
so the uh one of the things to remember is that it is a lot is in the way you present yourself, because if you come at it like a drill sergeant, it is gonna feel really attacking, right? So you do have to consider the way you ask the questions. The other part is that um, it, if you consider somebody who's considering and contemplating ending their lives, it's a tremendous feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. All right. So just knowing somebody cares enough to ask them these questions oftentimes brings a relief to them, because you represent options. All right. And so uh most people in that aren't seeking, really, this is the solution that they've arrived at. And if you can give them a different idea, a different solution, then that gives them a sense of hope, right? And so I know that Kai had put, who lies with it. Generally, that's not the case. Generally people are happy to know that somebody cares, and you're going to, direct direct questions yield you direct answers. And so if you sidestep it too much, then they're going to mirror that and sidestep it as well. So that's why it's important to say the words like suicide. It's important to be direct about it. Um, but you can deliver that message in a softer tone.
Thanks, Doug. And William, I see your hand raised too. Go for it.
Sorry, I don't want to take on too much of these things, but another thing I kind of wanted to add based on what I have been seeing in the chat about rephrasing and potentially changing, emphasizing more on what resources we can provide. I posted a response in the chat, but I think I just wanted to emphasize. Someone's going crazy with the door over there. Something I just wanted to emphasize that simply going and saying what resources can we provide or what other options are there, that type of thing isn't necessarily going to be helpful, because for that student, if they've decided to end their life, that's the option they've chosen. That's the option that they want to go with, or that may be the only option they see available to them. So if we just go and say, what resources can we provide? They may not know what resources they need. They may not know what resources are available to them. Like, I responded to a student who really was dead set on they wanted to end their life, and they told me that much, and I said, hey, are you thinking of killing yourself? And those were the words I used, and they said yes, because I don't know anything else. And if I had gone in there and just said, what resources do we need, resources can we provide you, they wouldn't have had anything. They would have their solution, their resource for them was ending their life, because, as Doug mentioned, those students are in such a hopeless place, they don't necessarily see another option. And so I don't want to dominate the conversation here. I feel like I've responded a lot, but it's just something I'm very, very passionate about, given that it's tough to ask the question. It's incredibly tough to ask the question. I never want to have to yeah. never want to have to ask it again.
Yeah,
But
thanks, William.
yeah, so just it's tough. Don't have it be the entire. Don't just walk into the room being like, "Hey, have you thought about killing yourself?" But build it in naturally, and it's all about delivery. So
Yeah, and if we circle back to purpose here, the purpose of this is to assess. If you enter and offer resources, that's a completely different intervention, right? And you actually have no idea if someone's open to resources or problem solving if you don't first assess what is going on. And these 6 questions help you determine, okay, what is the problem? What do I need to do? And so rephrasing is okay if you are asking these 6 questions that are evidence based. If you are not doing that, then you're not providing the best possible intervention in the moment. But I'll give you some examples about how to rephrase because I'll take these and like if I ask them like this, I would feel like a robot. It's just not for me. So I will do a lot of reflective listening woven into this. I will actually make these questions a little bit more leading, which I know some people discourage. But again, if someone is not experiencing suicide ideation, they'll tell me, and then I have good information from that too. So what you could say is something like, all right, so for question 1, it reads, actually, could I have a reader for question 1? Just hear a different voice other than mine, please.
Have you wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up?
Thanks. So I might say, hey, I know you've really been struggling lately, and it's normal when people feel like this to have thoughts about suicide. Tell me what's been coming up for you. So that's actually making a bigger leap to say, like, oh, I'm actually already acknowledging that it's probably in their head. And if it's not, what do you think that person might say?
Usually, if it's not, they're very quick to be like, oh no, I'm not thinking of anything like that. I'm just going through a hard time right now.
Exactly. They will correct. And then we can move on from this because then I have confirmation that, okay, yes, they're struggling, but no, they're not experiencing suicide ideation. If they are, and I was able to make a really educated guess and connection about something that might be true for them, but they were afraid to say, how do you think they might feel? If I asked and was right.
Some people sometimes look as if they're relieved that someone's finally opened the door for them to have that conversation with someone.
Tori, you are so right. And it's usually pretty palpable. Like there isn't a tensing up that like, oh, I've inserted an idea that's not true. Often what is the case is that somebody's shoulders start to fall a little bit and there's a sense that, oh, okay, they get it. And then even if I start to feel really anxious, like, oh my God, here we go. That's a good cue for me to relax my body a little bit. And if my mind goes completely blank and I forget what to ask next, because that is really normal, that is okay too. So tell you a little side story. Back when I was practicing as a clinician in the beginning, I used to carry around paper copies of this because I knew that when this would happen, all of these questions would just fly out of my brain and I would forget everything to say, even though it's 6 questions. It's not that complicated. But you don't have to have paper copies with you anymore if you are worried about not knowing what to say. There's actually an app that you can use now. Um, Generally speaking, like, are folks here pretty good about like carrying their phones around with them generally? Yeah. Most people are. Um, I'll show this to you. This is a free app that you can download, and it's really simple. And it's not overly busy. It just guides you through what the 6 questions are and what to do next, depending on what the person says. So you don't even have to worry about remembering what to say or remembering if someone says yes to 6, do I have to get a higher level of care? What do I ask next? Like that's you what your job is to just be present and stay in the room with somebody. And this can be a helpful tool to do that. So this is here if anybody wants to snap a pic of it so they can start to download it. But it's also in a handout that I'll send out to everyone at the end too. I'm just being mindful of the chat and questions that are coming in. Britt, is there anything that you're seeing that would be important for the good of the group before I go on to what's next?
It looks like you've covered all the questions so far. There's just been comments or answers to your questions to those who can't go over the microphone.
Okay, awesome. I know that this is deeply, deeply uncomfortable to do this. Um, but in order to be kind to your future selves, who may end up having to say these questions to somebody in the future, we are just going to practice so that when you have to do this, not if, but when, more than likely, it won't be your first time. So what I am asking is to please mute yourselves. And we are going to do just like question by question. I'll say it and then you say it so that your brain and your body will have gone through this once with a calm or semi-calm nervous system, just helping your future self be effective. Okay? So we will go question by question. All right. Everybody muted? Okay. And then we can laugh about how weird it felt and then we'll get over it. Okay. So the first one is, have you wished that you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up? All right. Now you go. Excellent. Have you actually had any thoughts about killing yourself? You go. Excellent. And in this imaginary question that we're doing, we'll imagine they said yes. Have you been thinking about how you might do this? Have you had these thoughts and had some intention of acting on them? Have you started to work out or worked out the details of how to kill yourself? Did you intend to carry out this plan? Have you done anything, started to do anything, or prepared to do anything to end your life? Okay. Thank you all for rehearsing that just once through. What did that feel like to just say that aloud to yourself?
It kind of took a weight off of my shoulders because obviously it's a really hard thing to ask and get used to asking and just prepare, but it's good to hear myself say it.
I hear that, McKay, and be okay on the other side of it, right? Like you've done it once, nothing new or bad happens from asking. What other responses did people have to just hearing themselves say this? Because it's kind of weird and scary, even if you're alone. I doubt it was relieving to everyone. So let's hear somebody else's reaction. Neutral, intensifying, what came up?
I sat in my dorm by myself and I'm having a snack, but I noticed I started stress eating a little bit after saying it.
So glad you mentioned that. Can anybody identify with that? Just like noticing a little rise in stress levels. Yeah, really, really normal. And so if you can, just invite yourself to take a stretch break, kind of cycle through that a little bit, because it is really intensifying. And it should be because this matters. Thank you for being willing to practice. If you go through this with somebody, either like doing it on the app on your phone or asking them from memory, and that is fine. If you are one of those amazing people that can commit these 6 questions to memory, I am not. That is okay. Um, what do you think would be really important to communicate next? Like, regardless of the what comes next in crisis level planning, just like human to human, what would you want somebody to say to you?
I think for me, Ellen, it would be something to the effect of just simply knowing that they're there for me in that moment.
Yeah. Like, thank you so much for telling me. We are going to figure this out.
Hmm.
It's really hard to acknowledge that all of this is true for you. It's really good that you said something. Because if somebody is telling us this, really like gifting us with this information about what they are moving through, we have an opportunity to save a life here. And that matters a lot. And you've just taken somebody in a moment of, real solitude and isolation and pain and brought them into connection with you. And regardless of how you ask and what you ask, there's actually no greater gift than that.
Ellen, just to say, Kaya had said, just validate their emotions and reactions to the situation that they're in. So just making them feel seen.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Kaya, what are some phrases that you use that are well received to validate emotion? Because I bet that you're really good at this with your work. I'm totally putting you on the spot, but thank you in advance.
I'll share some Natalie while we wait for Kaya. Natalie says, in quotes, even if it feels like there is no one here for you right now, I am. There's also, it's so good that you came to someone. I am proud of you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Kaya said, it's hard to talk about your emotions, and thank you for trusting me with this.
Brilliant. Thank you for trusting me with this. That's amazing. Because what an interesting thing it is.
Luke added, probably making me feel like I'm not, I guess, weird for it. People may think something is wrong with them feeling that way.
Yes. Yeah. Because of course, like this is not a comfortable way to feel. And so even if you are feeling nervous as the asker of these questions, just normalizing like, yeah, like this is really hard to feel this way. This is actually really common. I'm so glad you came forward about this. We can do something about this.
I think also just like emphasizing how proud you are of them for having the courage to talk about how they're feeling, because talking about your emotions in general, let alone suicidal thoughts, is really hard. And kind of like Luke said, they might be feeling like something's wrong with them, which it's not true, and it's good to talk.
Oh, so true. And especially like it's really hard to come forward about this to peers, especially. And so I recognize like what a hard job this is that all of you are doing and like being in relationship with your peers who are struggling, asking this information. Like this is serious, serious work and it's so important. for you and for them. Before we go a little further into practice, does anybody have just any immediate, like, practical questions about how to use this, what to say next, or comments? Okie dokie. Let's just go through a couple practices so that you can see how this looks in a like a role played scenario. And then we'll go into like just different decision trees of like, all right, so now you've got this information. What do we do on campus? Britt, have you got something?
Yeah, Kaya just chimed in right before you, or right
Oh,
as you
great.
started there. She just wanted to point out this idea that she feels like suicide should not be an uncomfortable topic, much like sex. It is a super common thing, and people should learn how to talk to those in this situation to create a better environment for those experiencing these thoughts. I know it is a hard thing to learn about, but I think that it should be a more normal topic of conversation. And I think that would help not only us, but those who we interact with who are in a crisis point.
True that, Kaya. Thank you for that. It is so accurate that the more comfortable we feel in addressing this, because it is so common, the better we will be at responding. Thank you for that. All right, let's see this in action. Um, if anyone wants the app, again, here she is. So cool. Um, Here's a little bit of a case scenario. So we're just going to get some background on Tori here, Tori's case, and then Tori and I are going to model how these questions might come up in a real life setting. So just for context and to break up the voices, could somebody that isn't Tori and I please read just this little context piece for everybody?
Sure. Tori
Thanks.
has been isolating and emotional lately. They feel overwhelmed academically and socially in this environment. They had been really stable before they decided to come to school and are afraid to admit how much they're struggling. Finally, they have come forward and admit that they have been having urges to overdose and have stopped taking their medication to save it up.
Thank you. Okay, so that's sort of the whole shebang here. Now I'm going to pretend to be Tori's RA, okay? And I'm going back to the questions because I'm new to this and I don't remember what they are. But I've just seen Tori be really down and out lately. So I'm going to pretend that I just like went and knocked on their door to check in and they answer. Okay, so I'm just going to start off by saying, like, hey, Tori, like, do you have a minute to chat?
Yeah, I do. What's up?
Thank you. Is your roommate home, by the way?
No, they're actually at class right now.
Okay. Um, Thank you for letting me come in. You've been on my mind a lot lately, and I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing because I've just noticed a shift in your mood recently.
Yeah, I've been kind of sticking to myself, not feeling so great lately. College isn't going exactly as I expected it to.
I noticed that. I remembered you at a lot of the floor events in the very beginning, and I've just totally stopped seeing you. What's going on?
Everything is just harder than I expected it to be. Um, I was really excited for like coming to college and I thought I was gonna do a good job, but it's been a lot tougher than I expected and my academics aren't doing so great and I'm just not feeling so great about being here right now.
I'm so I'm so sorry to hear that you're struggling. It's really hard to feel like that away from home, especially. You said something that I just want to circle back to though, which is that you don't really want to be here anymore. Could you tell me more about that?
Um, I kind of just feel like maybe this isn't for me. Um, yeah, it's just like things aren't working out like I thought, and maybe it would just be better if I left.
Mm. This meaning school or this meaning your life?
Um, probably like a bit of both, honestly.
I'm really, really glad you told me. Have you noticed yourself? Like, I mean, just thinking back to other folks that I know who have felt this way, like it's really common when they feel this way to have thoughts about not wanting to be alive anymore. What thoughts of like that have come up for you lately about killing yourself, not wanting to live anymore?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely thinking about that.
Tell me more about what you've been thinking about and how you might do this.
Well, yeah, I've been kind of thinking about it for a while. I just feel like it's kind of the best option for me right now. Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot and yeah,
And
making
as
making steps towards that.
what steps, when you think about it, how might you go about this?
Well, yeah, I have some pills that I've been thinking about using.
Okay. And so you've been thinking about overdosing. Have you started to think about when you might do this?
Um, I don't necessarily have like a win, but I've been like saving up my medication, so sometime soon, but I don't have like a date picked out or anything.
And we'll freeze from here. Thank you, Tori. So having seen this play out, and seen, I on purpose kind of rephrased some of these 6 questions, but they were all in here. Would you rate Tori as kind of a low risk, a moderate risk, or pretty high risk in looking at this particular tool?
I have some people saying high risk in the chat.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, very high risk, pretty high risk. You are absolutely right. What did you hear that Tori said that clued you into knowing, oh, okay, this is high risk? Was there anything that stood out to you?
The plan,
Yeah, yeah. What was Tori's plan?
I don't want to be here anymore.
Bingo. Yep.
Of course, the method that they referred to,
Yep.
pills,
Absolutely.
feeling like it's the only option.
You are listening and keyed into the exactly right parts here. Thank you. Yeah, you assessed that perfectly using this tool. That would be a really high risk case. You're probably thinking like, okay, what do I do next in this case? Um, let's let's play this out a little bit further. So based on what you heard, and I'm just asking, kind of like assessing for background information here, if somebody responded in this way to you, um, using this tool, doo-doo-doo, if someone's considered high risk, what would you want to do? There's a little key down here at the bottom, which is really, really helpful. Does anybody have a guess?
Kaya says probably get the cops there for a wellness check and obviously call the RD on duty.
Hmm. Yeah, Kaya, that's a really good option and one that is certainly valid. Down here at the bottom, I mean, she nailed it. You can call 911 or go to the emergency room for immediate help, um, and stay with them. That's the really important thing. I'm going to switch gears and show you a little visual, like a flow chart for how to make these decisions in the context of SMCC, so that you are aware of what resources are available to you. This is busy, but we'll go through it together, using Tori as the example. So Tori definitely reported that she was suicidal. She's been thinking about taking an abundance of her medication. So she's got thoughts of suicide. She has a plan. She's got some intention to act, but we don't know exactly when. And she definitely has access to means. She started taking actions by stockpiling her medicine, but she hasn't taken it yet. So, using the results from this tool, we've assessed her as being pretty high risk. And from here, if you are all by yourself, as is often the case when you are working as an RA on the weekend, at night, when these kinds of things happen, it's not always possible to consult with a colleague. But when you can, it's a really good idea too. And a colleague can be a fellow RA, it can be an RD if possible, but it's not entirely necessary. If you are by yourself, forget this part. But when possible, I like to share the load with a fellow staff member so that I feel really good about what decision that I'm making. And from here, when somebody is high risk, we really have three choices on the SMCC campus. Like Kaya said, we could call 911 and stay with the student so that they come right away and they can take over the assessment of Tori. But there's another option too, because although Tori was presenting as really high risk, did she say that she had actually taken her medication in abundance yet? Yes or no?
No, she didn't.
No, she hadn't yet. And so we could call 911, but since she doesn't need immediate medical attention at this time, it would also be perfectly appropriate to instead call 988, which is the suicide or main crisis hotline, and they take over assessing from there. They'll come to the school and meet with somebody. But what is really important is that you stay with the student until that assessment happens. What happens though if you don't feel comfortable doing that, or just like logistically for whatever reason, like you cannot? Like, let's pretend it's a wild night on the floor and Tori reports this, and then immediately you hear like, gosh, I don't know, I'm trying to make this up. There's a fire in another room down the hall, and like physically, you cannot be in two places at once. It is totally okay to call in reinforcements at this time. And even if it's just because you don't feel confident in doing this by yourself, call security and have them stay with you. They are on campus 24 hours a day, and you do not have to do this waiting part alone. Because sometimes crisis comes fast and sometimes it takes a little while.
Ellen,
Yeah.
related to that, Natalie did mention that in the meantime, while you are waiting for backup or the cops, let's say, trying to keep them maybe a bit distracted, like playing a video game or watching a movie together, just so that way maybe it helps with their mood as well as make them feel comfortable enough to talk to people when they do arrive.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Natalie. Sweet, sweet distraction. This is the time. Like, once you've already assessed this, like, you don't have to ask anything else. You don't have to go where you don't belong or dig any deeper. But what's awesome is that you're also not rejecting or shutting that person out. Like, this is a great time to do something neutral, like watch a movie or videos or, you know, introduce them to your amazing service dog, Noni. I don't know. Whatever the case might be. So circling back to this, we could call 911. We could use 988, which is crisis, or if this is during the daytime, which it might be, um, has anybody ever had experiences with the Living Room Crisis Center before in downtown Portland by any chance? Good, bad, indifferent? That's okay. If not, I just want you to know that it exists. So, this is run by Spurwink and it is on Elm Street in Portland. It's open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And you can get walk-in crisis care or just stay for the day if you are in isolation and would like company. They have crisis workers who do mental health assessments and psychiatric nurse practitioners. And so, if a student is agreeable to getting support, and let's just say, like, let's pretend, like, for Tori's case specifically, if this is something Tori has lived with for decades, in their life and they are well versed in like this experience in their mental health and they've sought crisis services in the past and what they're really seeking is like somewhere to be that is safe for the day until they can like reconnect with their care team, they might voluntarily go to the living room crisis center if they have transportation. But what's hard is that a lot of our students don't. And so if I had to guess, I would say that more than likely you'd be using 988 or 911 more frequently.
And I would add in that um, uh, RAs or RDs should not be in a position where they are the transport for the student. All right. If they, have their own transportation, things like that to get to the living room, they can take advantage of that. But uh, RA should not be in the position of needing to transport a student to that. So use 98 or 911 if they're not capable of doing it themselves.
True that. Let the professionals come to you. And from there, like a variety of things can happen. Once 988 staff or 911 are on the scene, they take over the assessment and they may feel completely like based on the assessment tools that they use, which will probably be the CSSRS in addition to several other things, like they might be totally in line with your assessment. And a student might be transported to a crisis unit or to the emergency department who's feeling this way. But it's also possible that they might not. As weird as that sounds, somebody might meet with a crisis worker, make a plan, and come right back to the unit. And that can be really, really, really hard to sit with because then we don't really know what happened or how that decision was made, but we know that a licensed mental health professional has made a complete assessment and made the decision that that person is safe to come back into our community. And then we, as student life staff, are just kind of left to live with it. And so from here, I think considering what we do for aftercare is really, really important. Like, not just for the student, but for ourselves. And so, after you have a crisis response like this, how do you think you might feel?
I know personally, I'd probably feel extremely concerned and worried, or I'd pick up on those others' feelings, and because I know that with me, I pick up on other people's feelings and I get energy from others. So I would probably be going through a little bit of a rough patch and trying to not let it affect me, but being worried about that student and the other people it could have impacted as well.
Right? Can anybody relate to that? Oh, yeah. And that is normal. And if that is true for you, I cannot express enough how important it is to do things that are regulating for you and connecting for you. And honestly, like finding a place to process what happened, if not with friends, because you don't want to divulge confidential information, with staff after either your peers, myself, Doug, your RD, because it's really important to process when something like this happens. Well,
Ellen,
yeah, sorry.
oh, sorry, Will. Uh, just in relation to what you're saying is, yeah, people are saying sharing that they are, of course, would be concerned or worried for the student, but also wondering if they did the right thing, which I think plays right into what you just said, is sort of processing that with your RD or anything like that to kind of squash a little bit of those, post-adrenaline feelings and thoughts where you start to think of all the things you could have said or done better.
So true. And it's super normal to feel unsure with our decision. Question for you guys, and we haven't talked about this explicitly, so answer as best you can. If you are ever by yourself and you are really on the cusp of what to do, like you're just not sure if someone is like moderate or high risk, do you think that we would rather have you call 988 or 911 or not if you were unsure and you were left to make a decision alone?
Call 988.
For sure. What makes you say that?
Because they're the professionals. They know what's going to happen. If you feel as if you're not sure, it's most likely your gut's telling you, you know what's sure. Call 988.
Exactly. And these are human lives we're talking about. And as a school, like we would rather, like I would so much rather you be wrong and have overreacted and maybe have a student be like, gosh, like Ellen is so uptight. I can't believe she called and be alive than for me to have underreacted and have someone do something to harm themselves when I had an opportunity and they missed it. And so know that like as a team, we have got your back, even if in the moment you're like, I can't ask those 6 questions. I just really want crisis to come and do this. That's fine. Totally fine. William, please go. I'll stop talking over you.
No, we're good. I just had a quick question kind of about what you were recently talking about. In the case of this scenario, I think it seems the student is willing to get help and willing to go talk to 988 or 911 or Living Room Crisis Center. What I was just wondering, what would be the expectations of our staff, but also legally, what are the requirements or resources if a student is, or any individual is, we can clearly tell that they are going to hurt themselves or we're severely concerned they're going to hurt themselves, but they're refusing to get help or refusing to talk to us type thing. I mainly ask just because my last institution, in Florida, there is a law called Baker Acting, which I'm sure you know about, that they can actually be involuntarily. Now I'm just curious if something similar like that exists here in Maine or what the expectations were, because there may be a situation where a student is, yeah, it would be the police who make that determination, but I was just wondering what that type of process, how it would be different here if the student or person of concern was not willing to get help, like not willing to talk to you, not willing to go with them. What happens then, just so that we can know what.
Gotcha. Dr. Stoves, take this one.
Okay, so if you're in a scenario and the student is in crisis and they've alluded to the fact, or you're concerned at the fact that they're going to harm themselves, the best people to make that assessment is either the crisis line or 911, right? Because they're the ones that are the trained professionals for it. And we know that in most cases they're going to err on the side of caution, right? And so basically it's you get it out of your hands as quickly as you can,
Mhm.
right? And then you get the people who are steeped in this work to make that assessment. Now they'll make the assessment as to whether or not that person needs to be transported, and then further, if they are to be given an emergency detention, because what we're talking about is depriving somebody of liberty, and there's only certain categories of professionals, that being mental health counselors or the police, that will be able to enforce that. And so it's kind of like, you may know CPR, but you still call 911 to get the people there to make the final assessment.
Okay, that makes sense. Just wanted to check because I know there've been a few times where I've had to respond to someone and they've absolutely refused to get any kind of help, even though we knew they needed it. And the police actually had to basically arrest them.
Yep. And that's what it is that
Yeah.
it's called depriving someone of their liberties. And there's, the police have the option to do that because they are basically enforcing a law.
But I would say don't try not to maybe don't emphasize, don't be like you have to agree with us or this will happen, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's in your assessment, if somebody is cooperative and willing to accept help, 988, Living Room Crisis Center are your best bets. If somebody is not, 911 for all the reasons we just described. All right, let's keep going with questions. What's coming up for people, if anything?
Nothing new just yet, Ellen.
Okay. So after a major event like this, and if 988 or 911 is called to do an assessment, um, doing your own aftercare is critical. If you can, consult with your team. And if possible, if the student's actually transported or provided an inpatient stay for a little while in a psychiatric or crisis stabilization unit, it's always good practice to do some kind of reentry meeting with them. It's not always possible, but when we can, we do. Or a referral to our behavioral health teams on this campus, or if somebody's connected to them off campus, that's a great time to pursue that. If you're curious, like what we've got on this campus for those sorts of services, the Advocacy Resource Center is an outlet, and we have counseling too. If somebody has a team that they're established with in the community, it is totally okay to refer them back to people who they're connected with and have good relationships with. I think we've got time for one more example. Doug, are you ready? Excellent. Okay, I need a reader who can give us the little snapshot of context about Doug.
I can do it.
Thank you.
Doug gets in a fight with his roommate, typical Doug, and you overhear him shout from his apartment, "I don't want to effing do this anymore." You knock and ask to chat. He reports having urges to jump out of his window. You stay with him, and he acknowledges that this is stress related and he would never leave his dog.
Thank you. All right, so that's setting the scene here. Now I'm gonna go back to my questions here. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, Doug, are you in there?
Yeah, I'm here. What do you want?
So, just heard what you shouted a minute ago. Can I come in?
Sure, sure. Need somebody to hold this leash anyway.
Okay, so Doug, what's going on? Talk to me.
Can you believe? Look around this room. Look at this mess. I just can't fucking take this anymore. This is ridiculous. I tell you, I'm sitting here. I'm covered. The floors are covered. I can't go to sleep because he's up all night. This is ridiculous. I tell you what, I'm just ready to just jump out the damn window. That's what I'm ready to do.
I see the mess that you're talking about, and I can appreciate your frustration. There's junk everywhere
I
here.
hope so. I hope so. Just look at this. That's a meal from yesterday. It's still here.
So you want to jump out your window. T-
Yeah.
Tell me more about
It's
that.
better than living here. I tell you, I mean, come on. Look at where we're at. This is like living in a garbage pail. Should call this guy Oscar instead of, it's just ridiculous. I'm just stuck here. I'm stuck here. I can't figure out any other way to get out of here. I mean, I got to go out the window because I can't go out the door. That's the problem.
You want out of this situation
I
more
want
than
out of
anything.
this room now. And if I have to go out the window, but I mean, I can't leave Nala here.
So, Doug, let me ask you this. I've heard you mention a couple times you want to jump out the window here, and I can see that you're frustrated. And forgive me, like I gotta ask here, like, are you having thoughts of suicide here?
No, no, no. I'm just sick and tired of dealing with this. I've just had enough.
That makes so much sense. I mean, you've been talking about this since the end of August, and things really haven't gotten better here.
No, all I get is a bunch of empty promises. I just can't take this.
And I'm just peering in here. I see that like you've got the window open for ventilation. Like have you actually contemplated jumping out here?
No, that's just a figure of speech. I haven't really, you know, I, I really can't do that.
Okay. Pause. Pause, pause, pause. Thank you, Doug.
Mhm.
So taking a look at this, how would you assess Doug? Low, moderate, high risk?
I'm getting low risk in the chat.
What makes you say low risk here? He's talking about jumping out his window. His window's open. I don't get it. What's the deal? How is that low risk?
While we wait, Ellen, for me. Oh, someone put his tone when he's speaking is kind of satire. That was Chanel. Kaya says, I think that this is when a roommate mediation or a room swap are for viable options,
Mm.
more viable options.
So
Kim,
getting into some problem solving. Go ahead, Brett. Sorry.
that's okay. Cami says he needs some better coping mechanisms for his stress and frustration.
Right? We'll get you set up with some behavioral health here. So let's look at what we could do though to respond to a situation like this because I mean Doug's clearly dysregulated. We don't want to leave him with nothing here. But let's go through the decision tree. Um, so true or false? Doug reported suicide ideation. True or false? Did you hear any? Ooh, Okay, Natalie says true. I just want to read Presley's statement. She said, I know as a teenager, we can all be dramatic sometimes and say something as a figure of speech that can be a little harsh, more than we intend out of frustration. Show of hands, who's been there? Me. Especially under the stress of school. My gosh. And he did make a statement, and so it's our job to assess. I did. So there's thoughts there. Does he have a plan, though?
Kaya says he didn't explicitly say he wants to die, and what if he's on the first floor?
Good point. Yes.
Poor planning. That's all.
Well, and with that, like, even if he had said yes and had started to pry open his window to do so, like, we're kind of assessing the lethality here in his means. Like, could he just step out of his window and be completely fine? Okay, yes, we still might want to intervene, but that's not probably going to be a life-ending gesture, right? So he is low risk. And using this decision tree here, if someone is presenting with low risk, but certainly with some emotion dysregulation like this, what do we want to do? Looking at the flow chart here. We just close the door on his face and say, okay, have a good night. Stay in your room.
You'd want to refer him to behavioral health and natural supports for assessment care.
Absolutely. What could that sound like in your own words?
I know that you're going through a lot. Can I give you some resources that are here on campus to help you with your emotions and help you get through this situation a little bit better?
Love it. Yes. Help increase his capacity to cope. And then I'm just echoing, this is not on here, but was a really great one. Like helping him get some roommate remediation because let's be honest, that sounds really frustrating. He's living in a pigsty. He's got a dog. Not okay.
Chat is saying Presley said I would have a meeting and a debrief as it seemed low risk, but a common problem that is occurring. And then Kaya says refer to your RD for help and behavior help both on and off campus, offer resources, mediation, and roommate agreement.
Awesome. 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 Excellent application of skills. Okay, so recognize that this is a thick topic. There's a lot to go over here. And I'm not in a rush to go anywhere this afternoon, so I'm happy to stick around. For the good of the group, I'm curious, are there any scenarios that you would like to de-identify and talk about today, just in terms of like, well, what if this happens, what do I do? Like, this is the thing that I'm afraid of happening on this campus. What do I do?
I think something that concerns me a lot is just the amount of people that live on campus and the amount of people that are commuters. Because I know with us, like identifying our residents on our floors isn't as difficult, but identifying all the residents can be a little bit stressful for me. So being able to understand who comes to dinner, who comes to all the events, and who isn't, and checking up on everybody is a little stressful for me personally.
Who can relate? Most definitely. And, to speak to that, like, there's no way for you to be keyed in to absolutely everybody and be able to know what each of your residents' mental status is at a given moment. It changes too readily, and our populations are too big. This is more so when you find yourself faced in a scenario like this and you become aware of information like this, you will know what to ask and how to respond. We are not suggesting that you have that kind of deep awareness, but whatever you can is great. Tori, did you have a thought? Oh,
Uh,
sorry. Muted.
Okay. I have something in the chat, Ellen.
Yeah.
So there is a person who tried to end their life twice in front of someone last year. This individual went to the RAs for help and it was disregarded. So just to reiterate what an important topic this is and not to disregard things even if it seems like the student might be being dramatic.
Mm. Kaya, that is so, so scary, made even more so by the fact that you had to respond to this in isolation without the assistance of your staff. I'm so glad we're here today talking about this so that other people don't have to be so similarly alone, because it is not being dramatic. And you are right, this is really prevalent on our campus. So we have to take it seriously.
Next question. Thomas
Yeah.
brought this up earlier.
Yeah.
A student shows non-life-threatening injuries that are caused by the student. How would you handle that situation?
Ooh, this is a good one. Okay, Thomas, in this example, are the injuries new or old?
Let's say that they're new.
Okay. Okay, so if they are new, let's talk through this as a group. What do you think you should do? And let's go a little further as to say that this is lacerations on wrist. What would you do? They're there in front of you, fresh injury. I'll start you off. First, feel nervous. Then, then what?
Can you hear me now? Okay, cool. I switched my mic. Um, I would check in on them, and kind of ask specifically what happened and ask the same questions. Um, I know that not just because someone is potentially like cutting or harming themselves doesn't mean that they're necessarily feeling suicidal, but I'd rather be more safe than sorry.
Doug, do you have something to add to that?
Well, I was just going to mirror that. I mean, it is, we can't just, assume or guess what they're doing or what's happening. So you have to take action, right? And so it's asking the questions. It's calling 988. It's calling 911. Um, uh, because sometimes, it could be a coping mechanism, but at the same time, we don't know that, and it's not up to us to make that determination.
Mhm.
So again, call the professionals. That's what they're there for.
Yeah. Ask the questions and then check in with this decision tree about what level of care you think is right. And if you know somebody, first of all, there's varying degrees of self-injury too. So if it leaves you feeling like, oh, this requires immediate care, get it. And if the injure self-injury is more benign in nature and routine, and when I say benign, like um at low risk of causing suicide, like exterior arm, it's very light in nature. That might be a really appropriate referral to behavioral health services too. But again, you get to decide in the moment, as long as you do something, one of these somethings.
Ellen, Ronnie brings up a good point too,
Mhm.
that even if someone is making a suicidal joke or dramatic statement such as, I want to jump out the window, it could also be a sign of suicidal ideation.
You have so got that right, Ronnie. And William, I see your hands up.
One other thing I just wanted that popped into my head that I think I've mentioned before, but also a sign for folks to be aware of that should be very alarming to someone is if someone's appearing extremely down, like for a long extended period of time, like they're acting like they're struggling with something, then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, they seem really happy. That can be a sign that they've made the decision to end their life. That's actually what happened with the person that did end my life then their life at my last institution was they were extremely down for a long period of time. Then their final day they were happy, telling all their friends they loved them, everything like that. And so just be aware of that, and don't assume if someone's suddenly having a really good day that means that they're all better and that they don't need assistance.
So glad you brought that up, and what this tool, like the CSSRS, I might have added whatever. What this helps us do is not assume, right? It just gives us license to get really direct and honest and show our students how much we truly care about them, because we do. And just want to reiterate the importance of you taking good care of yourselves afterwards too, because this is such important and hard work. And today's conversation is no different. Last thought, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, on top of what William was saying, I have witnessed something like that. People that I know have called it the surge, where they're gone from feeling like that for such a long period of time to all of a sudden they're super happy and excited, and like on their last day they're out doing all kinds of stuff. And I think it's really important that people more focus on the signs of what a surge can be, because it's different for all kinds of people and it's different in different scenarios too. And I think it's really important for people to realize that.
Absolutely. And although we can't be experts on everybody on our floors or of every single sign to be keyed into, we can be experts on what is our role, which is to be unafraid to connect and ask questions and just to know who to refer to if we are not sure. I just wanted to say a massive, massive thank you to everybody for your willingness to participate in this and be brave enough to ask questions and practice as a group. This is not an easy topic, and I am so impressed with this particular group of student services. Like our students are really lucky that they get to have you looking out for them. If anybody would like to stick around today, I am not in a rush. I'm going to hang out in Zoom for a little while. I am here for your questions or comments that you didn't get to share with the group, or just to re-regulate, because this was really tough. But for those that do need to transition, we are at 3 o'clock. Britt, Lex, William, Tori, Doug, is there anything that you want to communicate to this group before we let those who need to leave do so?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Ellen said, is that not only did you guys show up today, but you did remain engaged. So thank you to all of that for doing that. And that, of course, we're always here if you guys need to process this or anything, whether you need to G-chat it or meet with us, okay? And thank you, Ellen.
Thanks, everybody. All right.